Today we're going to explore a crucial concept in sociology: socialization. Socialization is the lifelong social experience through which we develop our human potential and learn culture. It's not something that happens only in childhood or during school years. It continues throughout our lives, shaping who we are and how we interact with the world around us. At its core, socialization is about much more than just picking up a set of norms or values. It's directly tied to the development of our personality, those fairly consistent patterns of acting, thinking, and feeling that make each of us unique. In other words, our personalities don't emerge in isolation. They grow out of our social experiences. Think about it this way. From the moment we're born, our interactions with parents, caregivers, peers, teachers, and even strangers play a central role in shaping how we see ourselves and how we learn to navigate the world. Without social experience, our human potential would remain undeveloped. Socialization is what gives structure to our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It's the process that makes us fully human. One of the key debates in understanding human behavior centers around nature versus nurture. This isn't just an abstract discussion. It shapes how we think about human potential and the roles people play in society. Nature refers to our biological traits, while nurture focuses on our experiences in society. Although both play a part, modern sociologists emphasize that our social environments, our nurture, play a far greater role in shaping behavior and personality than biology alone. The roots of this debate go back to the mid-19th century. Charles Darwin's groundbreaking 1859 study of evolution led many people to falsely conclude that human behavior was instinctive. This way of thinking misattributed differences in behavior to biology rather than culture. Unfortunately, this ethnocentric and racist view was then used to justify colonialism, with claims that some groups were naturally superior to others. Without denying the importance of biology, social scientists argue that nurture matters more in shaping human behavior. In fact, they often suggest that for human beings, nurture is our nature. Today, sociology challenges earlier views by showing that socialization, the lifelong social experience by which people develop their human potential and learn culture, is central to human development. Our personality, the fairly consistent patterns of acting, thinking, and feeling that make each of us unique, grows out of our interactions and experiences with others. Research on the effects of social isolation clearly demonstrates the importance of socialization. Without interaction and connection with others, individuals cannot fully develop their personality or even basic social skills. All of the evidence points to the conclusion that human development depends on meaningful social experience. Harry and Margaret Harlow's well-known experiments with rhesus monkeys provide powerful insight into this issue. By raising monkeys in conditions of isolation, they found that the animal's development was seriously disturbed. Monkeys deprived of social contact displayed fear, aggression, and difficulty interacting with others, even after being reintroduced to their social groups. Real-life cases of isolated children, such as Anna, Isabel, and Jeannie, reinforce this conclusion. These children, who grew up deprived of normal human contact and nurturing, showed severe delays in language, emotional growth, and social functioning. Such studies make it clear that without social interaction, healthy human development is nearly impossible. In short, while nature provides the biological foundation, nurture, our social world, plays the decisive role in shaping who we become. Now we turn to George Herbert Mead's work on the fascinating process of socialization and how it shapes the development of the self. The self is a crucial part of our personality and includes both self-awareness and self-image. Importantly, Mead emphasized that the self is not something we are born with. Instead, it develops gradually through social experience and interaction with others. For Mead, this development happens through the exchange of symbols, gestures, words, and actions that carry meaning. As we interact with others, we don't just react to what they do, we also seek to understand their intentions. This requires us to imagine what's going on in someone else's mind, a process Mead described as taking the role of the other. This ability to step into another person's shoes is at the heart of empathy. By imagining situations from another person's point of view, we not only strengthen our social connections, but also build a deeper sense of self-awareness. In this way, the self emerges as a product of social experience. It is not present at birth, but develops over time. It can only emerge through interaction with others, and it depends on the exchange of symbols. Seeking meaning leads us to imagine the intentions of other people, and truly understanding those intentions requires empathy, putting ourselves in their position and taking the role of the other. Through this process, Mead showed that who we are, our sense of self, is inseparable from the social world around us. According to George Herbert Mead, the self has a dual nature. The I represents the self as subject, the active, spontaneous side of our personality that initiates action. In contrast, the me represents the self as object, our image of how others see us, shaped by social expectations and feedback. Together, the I and the me illustrate how self-awareness emerges through social interaction, as we learn to balance our impulses with the perspectives of others. Mead also argued that the self develops gradually through a series of stages. In the stage of imitation, infants mimic the behaviors of others without really understanding the meaning or intention behind them. As children grow, they enter the play stage, where they begin to take on the roles of significant others, such as parents or siblings, imagining the world from their point of view. Later, in the game stage, children learn to take on the roles of several others at once, which helps them understand rules, cooperation, and the complex relationships of society. Finally, individuals develop an understanding of the generalized other, the widespread cultural norms and values that they use to evaluate themselves and guide their behavior in society. Mead's theory makes a major contribution by showing that symbolic interaction is the foundation of both the self and society. His insights highlight the importance of social experience and role-taking in human development. However, critics point out that Mead largely ignored the role of biology in shaping the self. For instance, Sigmund Freud emphasized the importance of the ID, the biological and unconscious drives that also influence human behavior. Combining Mead's focus on social interaction with Freud's attention to biological instincts offers a more complete understanding of how the self develops. Charles Horton Cooley developed the concept of the looking-glass self, the idea that our self-image is formed through our perception of how others see us. According to Cooley, we come to know ourselves not only by looking inward, but by reflecting on the judgments and reactions of those around us. This process works much like a mirror. In our interactions, we imagine how we appear to others, interpret their responses, and then use that information to shape our own sense of self. If others respond positively, we may develop confidence and pride. If they respond negatively, we may feel shame or doubt. In this way, our self-awareness is not created in isolation. It emerges from constant feedback in our social world, showing us that our identities are deeply tied to our relationships with others. The family is often considered the most influential agent of socialization. It is the primary source of both emotional and material support, providing children with a safe and caring environment in which they begin to learn essential skills, values, and beliefs. Within the family, children are introduced to the foundations of social life, from basic behaviors and communication to the deeper aspects of identity. Parents play a central role in transmitting social identity markers such as race, ethnicity, and social class, which shape how children come to see themselves and how others view them. Research highlights that a family's social class has a profound effect on the socialization process. It influences the resources parents can provide, such as books, educational tools, and cultural opportunities, as well as the expectations they set for their children's future. Families from wealthier backgrounds often provide what sociologists call cultural capital, a combination of material objects, values, knowledge, and experiences associated with elite culture. Cultural capital enriches learning, fosters cultural awareness, and builds confidence, giving children advantages that help them succeed in school and beyond. Through these processes, children come to understand that their social status is not just an abstract concept, but something that affects how others perceive them and how they perceive themselves. Family, therefore, is not only a site of nurturing, but also a powerful force in shaping social identity and future opportunities. Schools play a critical role as agents of socialization by introducing children to a much broader social world than the family alone can provide. In classrooms, children encounter peers and teachers from diverse social, cultural, and economic backgrounds. This exposure helps them learn how to interact with people who may have very different life experiences, broadening their perspectives and teaching them the skills necessary for participation in society. Formally, schools focus on delivering knowledge and developing skills in areas such as literacy, math, and science. At the same time, schools also transmit what sociologists call the hidden curriculum, the unspoken lessons, values, and expectations embedded in daily routines and institutional practices. For example, activities such as spelling bees foster a spirit of competition, while classroom norms often reinforce broader social expectations around success, discipline, and conformity. Schools also play a role in socializing children into gender roles and shaping their awareness of class and race. In some cases, educational practices and policies unintentionally reproduce existing social structures, such as patriarchy or class inequality, by reinforcing traditional roles and maintaining divisions. In this way, schooling has a dual character. It can expand opportunities and promote social learning, but it can also perpetuate social hierarchies, highlighting the complex influence education has on individuals and society. Peer groups, made up of individuals who share similar interests, social positions, and ages, are a vital part of the socialization process. They become especially important during childhood and adolescence, offering a setting where young people can interact without direct adult supervision. This independence gives them the freedom to explore who they are and begin shaping identities that are distinct from those formed within the family. Within these groups, relationships are built around shared interests and common experiences. Peers often provide an outlet to discuss topics and ideas that adults may not engage with, giving children and adolescents the opportunity to experiment with different roles, behaviors, and perspectives. While parents may sometimes worry about the influence of peers, these groups play a key role in helping individuals practice social skills and develop autonomy. A central process within peer groups is anticipatory socialization, the learning of behaviors and attitudes directed toward achieving a desired future role. This can be seen when younger children look up to older peers and imitate their actions, whether to fit in or to prepare themselves for the next stage of life. Through these dynamics, peer groups not only provide support and belonging, but also help individuals navigate the transition into new roles and responsibilities. The mass media refers to the channels used to transmit information from a single source to a wide audience. Over time, communication technologies, from newspapers to radio, television, film, and now the internet, have expanded the reach and speed of information, transforming how people experience the world. Of these, television has had a particularly powerful influence, shaping cultural values and everyday understandings in ways both subtle and profound. Critics note that television is never just about entertainment. It also teaches, often reinforcing dominant messages about capitalism, racism, sexism, homophobia, violence, and criminality. In Canada, children are introduced to television well before they even learn to read, and the number of hours they spend watching typically increases with age, highlighting its deep role in early socialization. With the rise of internet-based technologies, the dynamics of media communication have shifted dramatically from a one-way flow of information to a multi-directional exchange. Unlike traditional mass media, where information traveled from a single source to a passive audience, social media platforms now allow people to interact, respond, and create content of their own. This interactive nature expands the role of socialization, creating spaces where individuals not only receive information, but also shape it, engaging in peer-influenced and highly personalized learning environments. Computer technology has made this possible by supporting thousands of social media platforms, or apps, short for applications, that enable blogging, photo and video sharing, and social networking. These technologies connect people in ever-changing communities built around shared interests and goals, fostering both local and global ties. The reach of social media goes far beyond what even the most widely circulated newspapers or television stations ever achieved. The images, messages, and narratives people encounter online strongly influence their perceptions of what is desirable or undesirable, right or wrong, shaping cultural norms in powerful new ways. In Canada, the impact of mass media is evident from an early age. Children are introduced to television long before they learn to read, and the hours they spend watching tend to increase as they get older. By adulthood, media exposure is substantial. Canadian adults, for instance, watched an average of 23.7 hours of television per week in 2021, with notable variations depending on age, gender, and region. Alongside television, internet access has become nearly universal, with 94% of Canadian households connected in 2020 compared to 89% just 3 years earlier. This level of exposure has significant consequences. While television and the internet provide entertainment and information, they also take time away from direct interaction with parents and peers, physical exercise, and other activities that are more likely to foster personal development and support good health. As a result, media doesn't just inform or entertain. It actively competes with other vital aspects of socialization and human development. Media and politics are closely connected, and the messages we consume often reflect broader social inequalities. For example, members of racialized groups remain underrepresented in many forms of media, although progress has been made over the years. At the same time, critics argue that television and film industries are not neutral spaces. Conservative commentators often claim that these industries are dominated by a liberal cultural elite that advances liberal causes, while research suggests that both liberals and conservatives increasingly stick to media outlets that confirm their existing views. Social media, in particular, has intensified this trend by creating echo chambers that narrow the range of political discourse. Another major concern in the relationship between media and society is violence. Violence has long been a staple of television and film, with studies showing that nearly 2/3 of television programs contain violent content. In response to public concern, Canada developed a rating system for programs to help guide viewing choices. However, with the rise of mobile devices, it has become increasingly difficult for parents and caregivers to monitor or restrict children's access to violent content. This highlights the ongoing challenges of balancing freedom of expression with the need to protect vulnerable audiences. Socialization is a complex and multifaceted process that cannot be reduced to the influence of a single agent. Instead, it involves a constant balancing act between different groups in society, such as family, schools, peer groups, and media. Each of these agents contributes in unique ways, whether through direct instruction, shared experiences, or the transmission of cultural norms and values. To truly understand socialization, it's important to look at how these influences interact with one another. Individuals are shaped not just by one environment, but by the combined and sometimes competing effects of many. Taking this broader perspective allows us to see how personal development and social integration are products of a dynamic network of influences, rather than the result of any single force. Now, let's look at how socialization unfolds across the stages of life, recognizing that this process is shaped not only by biology, but also by cultural, economic, and social contexts. Society organizes human development into stages such as childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and old age, each carrying its own expectations and roles. By examining these stages, we can see how individual growth is closely tied to societal norms. Childhood, for instance, is often idealized in high-income nations as a time of learning and play, a protected period where children are free from adult responsibilities. But this experience is far from universal. In many lower-income countries, children play a crucial role in supporting their families, working from an early age to help ensure survival. This difference highlights how much childhood is socially constructed, grounded in cultural and economic circumstances, rather than being defined by biology alone. Adolescence, on the other hand, is marked by cultural contradictions. It is often seen as a time of turmoil, as young people navigate the tension between personal desires and societal expectations. This stage involves the transition from dependency to independence, which can bring emotional and social challenges. Social class plays a significant role here as well, shaping access to education, opportunities, and resources. The experience of adolescence, therefore, varies widely across different cultural and economic settings. Adulthood is often described as the stage of life where many significant accomplishments take place, such as building a career, raising a family, or achieving personal goals. Unlike childhood or adolescence, personalities are generally more stable by this point, but social expectations continue to shape the milestones people are encouraged to pursue. Early adulthood, usually considered the years up to around age 40, tends to focus on establishing independence and working toward goals set during adolescence. This stage often involves managing daily affairs, pursuing higher education or career advancement, forming long-term relationships, and for many, starting a family. In many societies, women in particular may face pressures to do it all, balancing work, family, and personal aspirations. Middle adulthood, spanning roughly ages 40 to 65, brings different challenges. By this time, circumstances such as career and family life are often well established. This stage is frequently marked by greater self-reflection, with many people reassessing earlier goals and thinking about what they still want to achieve. Concerns about health, physical appearance, and aging become more prominent, alongside continued responsibilities toward family, work, and community. Old age, beginning in the mid-60s and beyond, represents a new stage in the life course. In Canada, there are now more seniors than teenagers, a shift often described as the graying of Canada. Older adults are increasingly visible in everyday life and play active roles in families, communities, and society at large, though this stage also raises questions about retirement, health, and aging with dignity. Gerontology, the study of aging and the elderly, explores both the biological changes that come with old age and the cultural attitudes that shape how society views older adults. As people age, they often experience physical changes such as graying hair, wrinkles, declining energy, loss of height and weight, reduced strength, and shifts in sensory abilities. Alongside these changes, the risk of chronic illnesses and life-threatening conditions increases steadily. Yet, it's important to note that many seniors maintain a positive outlook. Surveys show that about 8 out of 10 Canadian seniors describe their health as excellent, very good, or good. In pre-industrial societies, elders often held the greatest wealth, power, and prestige in a system known as gerontocracy. Their authority came from their experience, knowledge, and control over resources, giving them a central role in decision-making. In contrast, modern industrial and post-industrial societies often place less emphasis on the authority of elders, and in many cases, older adults face ageism, prejudice and discrimination directed against the elderly. Ageism can manifest in stereotypes about being less capable, resistant to change, or dependent, and it can negatively influence how older adults are treated in workplaces, families, and communities. Retirement also marks a major turning point in later life. For many, it brings a significant decline in income, which can make financial stability a concern. However, with the development of pension programs and other social supports, poverty rates among the elderly have declined compared to past generations. Still, financial security in old age remains uneven, heavily shaped by earlier work opportunities, savings, and access to retirement benefits. These differences remind us that aging is not only a biological process, but also a deeply social one, shaped by cultural attitudes and economic structures. In Canada, life expectancy reflects both biological and social influences, with men living on average to about 78.8 years and women to about 83.3 years. As people approach the end of life, they often undergo an emotional process that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross described in her model of dying. The stages include denial, where individuals refuse to accept the reality of death; anger, where frustration and resentment surface; bargaining, often framed as negotiation with God or fate for more time; depression, marked by deep sadness and resignation; and finally, acceptance, where individuals come to terms with the end of life. The life course is best understood as a combination of biological and social factors. While each stage of life reflects the biological process of aging, the meanings and expectations tied to those stages are socially constructed. Societies organize the life course by age, assigning different roles, rights, and responsibilities to children, adolescents, adults, and the elderly. But this organization is never uniform. It is shaped by other important factors such as class, race, ethnicity, and gender, all of which influence how people experience each stage. Life experiences also depend heavily on historical context. The time period in which a person is born shapes opportunities, challenges, and expectations. For example, being born during a period of war, economic depression, or technological revolution creates very different life trajectories compared to being born in times of peace and prosperity. A useful concept here is the cohort, which refers to a category of people who share a common characteristic, usually their age. Cohorts often have distinctive experiences because they live through the same historical events at roughly the same stage of life. This perspective reminds us that the life course is not simply an individual journey, but one shaped by broader social forces and historical moments. Total institutions are unique social settings where individuals are cut off from the larger society and placed under the close supervision of an administrative staff. Prisons are a classic example, but other institutions such as psychiatric hospitals or military boot camps operate in much the same way. Their primary purpose is resocialization, the radical transformation of a person's identity by carefully controlling their environment. Erving Goffman, a well-known sociologist, identified 3 defining characteristics of total institutions. First, staff members oversee and regulate nearly every aspect of daily life, leaving very little room for personal choice or independence. Second, the environment is highly standardized, with individuals required to dress alike, live in similar conditions, and follow the same routines. Third, strict rules and tightly structured schedules dictate behavior, creating a uniform rhythm of life that applies equally to everyone inside. Together, these features reveal how total institutions use control and routine to reshape individuals' identities in profound ways. Goffman outlined 5 distinct types of total institutions, each serving different purposes within society. The first type includes institutions that care for individuals who are incapable of caring for themselves or who are considered harmless, such as orphanages or elder care homes. The second type consists of institutions designed to care for people who may unintentionally pose a danger to others, like psychiatric hospitals, where treatment and supervision are central. The third type is focused on protecting the community from those who pose an intentional threat, with prisons being the most common example. The fourth type centers on instrumental tasks, where the main purpose is to complete specific missions or duties. Military boot camps and work camps fall into this category, as they emphasize discipline and task completion. Finally, the fifth type involves normative tasks, institutions such as convents or monasteries that aim to help individuals live according to moral or spiritual principles. By categorizing total institutions in this way, Goffman showed how these settings, though diverse in purpose, all exert strict control over the lives of those within them, shaping identity and behavior in profound ways. Resocialization is the process of radically changing a person's personality by carefully controlling their environment, and it often takes place within total institutions. In these settings, resocialization can occur both voluntarily and involuntarily. The transformation typically unfolds in 2 stages. First, the staff works to dismantle the individual's existing identity through practices that strip away individuality, such as issuing uniforms, enforcing strict rules, confiscating personal possessions, or even carrying out searches, head shaving, or assigning serial numbers. This stage, which Goffman described as the mortifications of self, breaks down the old sense of identity. The second stage involves building a new self that conforms to the institution's expectations, values, and norms. Staff rely on systems of rewards and punishments to encourage conformity and reshape behavior. For some, this process results in rehabilitation, like helping them adapt successfully to the institution's goals. For others, however, it can lead to institutionalization, where individuals become so accustomed to the rigid structure that they struggle to function outside of it. The identity transformation that occurs in total institutions highlights the powerful influence of social structures on individual behavior, raising important ethical and psychological questions about autonomy and selfhood. Moreover, reintegration into society after leaving such institutions can be challenging, as individuals must adjust to environments with less control and more personal freedom. This difficult transition reveals just how deeply institutional life can shape and sometimes limit personal identity and behavior.